Alright, so welcome back to Dell of Merchants 3. So for this video and several of the other videos after this one, I'm going to be talking in great detail about each of the cards that these merchants are trying to sell, as well as the merchants themselves. Now, as far as Dell of Merchants is concerned, Dell of Merchants 3 is actually the easiest to understand. I didn't have a single trouble understanding on any of these cards whatsoever. I didn't have to look them up in the rulebook and try to think of how they work, even though technically the rulebook doesn't have any information on how each of these cards work. You kind of have to almost go by looking at the cards and just trying to figure it out for yourselves. There is no rules of how these really work. I mean, there's some things in here to kind of give you sort of like a template to how these cards work, but there's no in-depth detail on any of these cards anywhere in the rulebook. So you just kind of have to come up with it on your own and figure it out on your own. And so let's mitigate that. I'm going to show you guys how each of these work, so that way you guys don't have to try to, figure it out for yourselves. Now I'm going to go with my favorite to my least favorite. So, obviously I like reptiles a lot, but that's not the only reason why I chose these guys as my favorite of this set. I just really love these cards. I love all of them in this set. So let's take a look at all of the cards in this for the archiving desert monitors. So for Rigorous Chronicler here, for this particular merchant, and this is a passive ability. When you purchase with this card, decide its value, 1, 2, 3, for this turn. So if you're going to buy a card, purchase a card from the market here, you get to pick how much it's going to cost on here, 1 to 3. So let's say if it was here and it was a 5, you could say it's going to be a 1. But remember, you still have the +2 here, so it would still cost 3. But instead of, that's a whole lot better than 7. So now with this card here, if you're purchasing with him, with this guy, all you'd need is 2 other cards costing 1 each, which is easy to pull off in the beginning of the game especially, because of all your junk cards you have. So that'll make it easier to draw cards, or should I say buy cards, from the market deck. That will make it a whole lot easier for sure. So that is super awesome. This is definitely one of the best starting merchants. Sometimes the merchants aren't as good, and so you're like, well, we'll just use this merchant for the first market stall, because a merchant must be basically in charge of his entire stall of eight different stalls. And so in your market, in your stall, so 8 sets anyways. And so for the first set in your stall, it has to be a merchant. So usually you pick a merchant that's not that great to put as your first one, obviously. But this, I would not recommend putting him as your first one, because he is going to make it so much easier to purchase items for sure. So that's how he works. Okay, so his next item here is the Refreshing Drink. It's another passive ability. When you discard one card, you may discard one card from your hand once in your turn. So this is a passive ability. You don't have to necessarily reveal it or anything, but if you're going to discard one card from your hand once in your turn, you have to have this in your hand to do it. And it's a passive ability, so you can just do it on your turn whenever, because it's a passive ability. So that's how the Refreshing Drink works, and that's a really cool one. I actually like that one a lot, because if you discard one card in your hand you don't like, when at the end of your turn, when you go to draw more cards, you're going to be able to draw an extra card, which increases your chances of getting more cards, which is why that's an awesome card. Duplicate Entry. Search your deck. You may throw away a card from there, and then you shuffle your deck. That is awesome. This is a technique with a plus on it, so you can use another action afterwards. But you get to search your deck with this card. You get to throw away a card from your deck, which is sweet. And then you get to shuffle your deck afterwards. That is awesome. I love that a lot. That is cool. Okay. History lesson. Another technique with a plus on it, so you can use another action after this. Shuffle up to 3 cards from the top of your discard pile into your deck. Well, that may not be as cool as some of the other ones, but that is still pretty nice and useful, especially if you know what those cards are that are sitting in your discard pile as well. That is definitely awesome. If you know what the top 3 cards are in your discard pile, well, that's perfect, especially if they're good cards. You get to use them much sooner, for sure. That'll make it awesome. I like that. Okay, now this one here is probably one of my favorites in this particular set of cards. All right, so here you have Cultural Preservation. Search your deck for up to 3 cards. Place 1 into your hand, and then discard the rest. Shuffle your deck. So this is awesome. You either search your deck, you're searching your deck for 1 awesome card you want to put in your hand. Yes. And then you search 2 cards you don't need anyway, and discard the rest. You're gonna have to discard the rest. You're gonna search your deck for 3 cards. You get to choose what those 3 cards are because you're searching your deck after all. And then you get to put 1 in your hand, and then you get to discard the rest and shuffle your deck. So obviously, it's a good idea to discard a couple of junk cards or a couple of cards you're not going to use or need at that right moment. For sure, that's an awesome one. This is definitely a cool one. And then the last one here, Slice of Life, is awesome too. It's another passive ability. You may draw 1 card from your deck and place it into your hand once in your turn. If you do so, discard 1 card from your hand. Well, that's cool. So, Slice of Life. You get to draw a card from from your deck, put it into your hand, and then you get to then you have to discard a card from your hand, and obviously. But if you got a bunch of junk cards, that's still awesome nonetheless. Slice of Life. That's the Slice of Life. That's an awesome card too. So that is how the cards work with this awesome animal merchant here, the Archiving Desert Monitors. All right, so who are we going to do next? Well, we'll see.